day closer to Notre Dame and Miami kicking off the season. Sean Steyer's with you. Jesse Steyer's is with me as well. Hope you're having a great day. Started off a little garbage weather around here in South Bend in the Michiana area. It was raining this morning, but it's nice out there right now. The sun's shining. We'll see what the weather's going to do in South Florida when the Irish get down to Miami Gardens Sunday night. How are you today, Jesse?
I was great until literally about 60 seconds ago.
Oh, what happened?
Cowboys traded Micah Parsons to the Green Bay Packers.
It happened? You're going to have to take yourself off mute.
Yeah, it happened, apparently. I'm done. I told you if they didn't re-sign Micah Parsons, I was done.
Wow. So this is real, like literally right as we are going on, huh?
Yeah. And I heard it was only for 2 first-round picks.
Well, we're not in Dallas, so we won't get hung up on this too much right now. I had no idea this happened, literally getting ready for the show to start. So there it is. I'm actually good with 2 first-round picks. So I don't know. I guess we'll see.
Let's get fired up about some Notre Dame football.
Yeah. Jesse just dropping the hammer right as the show starts. We've got a lot of we in, we out questions we're going to get to today. Tons of Notre Dame football, and we've got some potential Notre Dame USC movements that we'll talk about a little bit later in the show as well. Notre Dame, of course, kicking off the season Sunday night, Hard Rock Stadium in Miami, 7:30. Game day coverage starts at 3 o'clock Eastern time right here on Sports Radio WSBT, as well as the WSBT app and the Sports Radio WSBT YouTube channel. Tim Grau, Jim Irizarry, Eric Hansen, Tyler Horka on with you starting at 3 o'clock. A couple of the guests, Tony Rice and Mike Golick Jr. as well. So we will I'm a little bit kind of knocked back on my heels starting with that. Like I've been thinking that all this trade stuff with Parsons was just a bunch of whatever. I'm a little shocked that they would trade him to someone else in the NFC. But again, it's that's the big NFL news of the day. We've got Notre Dame football to talk about. Sean Kelly in the YouTube chat says, as an Eagles fan, I feel for you guys. Just an unfortunate situation. It is. I guess we'll see what happens, though. All right. We've got a lot of we in, we out questions to get to. Let's get to them, Jesse. From Bergier 23 to begin, are we in or we out? Miami fans are worse than Michigan fans.
No one's worse than Michigan fans. At least Michigan has a little bit more to stand on. Miami, this is just so interesting because, like I said yesterday, everyone talks trash. Every fan is going to get up here and talk some sort of trash. The real trash talking is done after the game is over. That is when it is, prime time. My team beat yours. You look like an idiot type situation. So I don't know if I'm a little biased because I went to school in Michigan. I have a lot of Michigan friends. I've been around the whole, Michigan bubble. But for me, there's really not a lot that tops Michigan.
Yeah, I'm going to be out just because I think that what's happening right now is kind of what happened with Texas A&M fans all last offseason, last year. What's happened, even with Penn State fans, of course, in the lead up to the Orange Bowl and the college football playoff semifinal. What happened with Indiana fans in the lead up to the college football playoff last year. All these teams, it's like they have nothing to go off yet. And all these teams and fan bases just, it's like you get a little bit obnoxious. Now, let's not pretend that no Notre Dame fan has ever done the same, because it's like I do see plenty of Notre Dame fans who are also puffing their chests out about their team, rightfully so, because of the fact that they, Notre Dame did go to the national championship game last year, but it is a brand new season. We're all turning the page. But I think that what Bergier is talking about with the Miami fans is just like another case of a fan base, just getting a little bold about their team before the season starts. It's really not that shocking, and it does sound like there's a lot of lingering hate, on the Miami side for Notre Dame, even though this rivalry again hasn't been a rivalry for 35 years, and they've only played 4 times in the last 35 years. But I think it's just, again, another fan base getting bold. We'll see what happens.
You've got nothing to lose, really. That's the fun part. Like you were saying, like at the beginning of the season, everyone's 0-0, and now is the time to really talk your mess if you want to.
Question number 2 from Bergier 23. Notre Dame will win by more than a touchdown against the Hurricanes.
This is what I'm trending to see. I think I kind of touched on this a little bit yesterday. To me, it's just a matter of, can Miami be just a respectable defense, just an average defense at the end of the day. They were so bad last year. It being CJ Carr's first game on the road, I see it kind of playing out a lot like Texas A&M, maybe close early on. Notre Dame will pull away, especially towards the third and fourth quarter. But, that could be limited. It just really all depends, in my opinion, where Miami's defense is at with the new D coordinator, a whole new portal defense. I don't know what to expect, but I do feel comfortable giving Notre Dame that kind of touchdown at least victory.
I think that if Notre Dame does not commit uncharacteristic, costly turnovers, yes, they are going to win by a comfortable margin of a touchdown or more. I am completely in on that. But like you said, what is Miami's defense actually going to look like? Again, like Miami is very confident in it. And I'm amazed at the number of stories that have popped up in these different news feeds today, the aggregated type stuff, and even some of the non-aggregated type stuff. Like people are really going out on a limb. Here's Miami's game plan. They're going to load the box and make CJ Carr have to beat him with his arm. You think? Like you're really
that doesn't take rocket science.
Yeah, as if Mario Cristobal handed them that game plan, and like everyone is so sure. Of course, that's what's going to happen until CJ Carr proves that he can beat you with his arm. Of course you're going to load the box, because Notre Dame is about, like, reputation-wise, it's offensive line and Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. I mean, like, you're not telling us anything with that. I mean, I think everyone's expecting that. But I expect, because of in large part because of Notre Dame's defense, again, unless Notre Dame commits a bunch of uncharacteristic turnovers, I do expect Notre Dame to win by a touchdown or more against Miami. Question number 3 from Bergier 23. I hope I'm saying that right. Trevor will have a goatee before Brian grows his out again. I don't know what's been going on that show. I'm not into the grooming habits of Trevor Trowbridge and or Brian Driscoll. I noticed that Jesse has his goatee going strong though right now. Is Trevor trying to grow a goatee right now? I don't know.
Maybe he's growing out that preseason goatee, that good luck goatee. Like he wants to grow it out and not shave it till they lose potentially.
Yeah. Maybe that's it. All right. Good questions from Bergier to start us off today. Irish English, in or out? Nebraska 24, Cincinnati 13.
Oh, wow. I forgot that game is tonight. If we're talking, exact score, I'd be out, because I'd go bet on it right now if this were the case, if I knew it was going to be 24-13. I think it's going to be closer than this. I think it's maybe a field goal to a touchdown type of spread. I think Cincinnati, obviously they're not super great, but they're not bad. And I think that Nebraska definitely has more to prove or to show in this game than Cincinnati does. So whatever the spread is, I would take Cincinnati to cover the spread.
Ooh, okay. I have no idea what the spread is. Let me see if I can find it here real quick. I'll pull up my FanDuel and see where we go. Let's see. I forgot that game was tonight as well. I heard an interview with Brent Musburger today, though, And he is a noted he when he left ABC/ESPN, he moved to Vegas, and he's got this. It's called the VSiN network. It's a sports wagering network, and this was before even the. I can't find it in here. I can't find that game for some reason. It's not popping up tonight. Can you find it in your app? But one of the things that Brent Musburger said: stay away from parlays. Like, if you really want to win something, stay away from parlays, because there's a reason all these sports wagering apps are dangling parlays in front of you all the time. It's because that's where they make their money.
Yeah, I mean, straight bettors are the most profitable bettors. Nebraska -6.5. That's about what I said before looking at it, about a touchdown spread. I would take Cincinnati +6.5. Honestly, I would take them at +7.5 at the alt. That way you don't get screwed over by a touchdown victory. You still have that insurance of a half a point.
There you go. All right. I would actually take Nebraska, even though Nebraska, like every year, teases us, and they still have to prove that they can actually win a close football game. But I would take Nebraska at just say -6.5.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd take them at -6.5. Next, we in or we out question from Lima Bean Irish. Are we in or we out? If it rains Sunday, Hard Rock Stadium will be 3/4 full.
No, I think this game is a sellout no matter what. Big opening season, first game of the season, top 10 ranked matchup. Miami's really trying to create that home field environment. And again, beginning of the season, right? There's new expectation, there's new hope, all of those things. I think if it were maybe 3-4 games in and Miami was 2-2 or 2-1, then yeah, I think fans might skip out. But beginning of the season, top 10 matchup, I think that place is packed no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, people who live in Miami are used to rain. Like, they know it's going to rain. I think it rains. They get some kind of rain, I think, just about every day. It's like you get those pop-up showers that last for 10 or 15 minutes. It goes away. You go on about your day. Now, obviously, some of the storms and stuff like that are predicted coming off the Gulf, and all that kind of stuff can be pretty unpredictable. I've never been in anything that severe, knock on wood, since I'm going to be down there this weekend. But I don't think it's going to keep people away. It's the season opener. Miami's been waiting for Notre Dame to get down there. So I think it'll be jam-packed, and Hard Rock Stadium will be rocking, whether or not, Sunday night. From Law Dog: after hearing Coach Marcus Freeman's comments about Notre Dame's defensive line, I realized that our depth on the line/ends and linebackers can come in waves and is more than Miami's O-line can protect the entire game. This game will resemble 2012 Alabama versus Notre Dame, except we're on the winning side this time. Are we in or we out on that?
I'll throw out the second part of this. I don't necessarily care for the comparison of the 2012 game, but what I really like the first part of this question, because I do think the advantage that Notre Dame has is they're just so stacked in depth, not only at the ones but the twos, and honestly kind of infiltrating into the threes at this point. And so when you have that depth along the defensive line, that is nothing but an advantage, because they can line change and really wear down those offensive linemen. You don't rotate offensive linemen, you rotate defensive linemen, so you're getting fresh legs, fresh pressure. And if you're a Notre Dame fan, that's what you have to be really excited about, is they've built up a ton of depth on the interior and on the outside on purpose. And Al Washington talked about it in an earlier media session this summer. I can't remember exactly when, but talking about, having a strong number of guys along the defensive line, and that number that they were shooting for, so they can have depth and rotate depth in and out of there and be really effective, and just really stay fresh. Like, that's the thing, is staying fresh, especially in this first game of the season. Your cardio isn't going to be 100% there. Your legs aren't going to be 100% underneath you. The weather is going to play a factor in some way. So having depth is going to be nothing but an advantage for Notre Dame.
I completely agree with that. That's a great assessment. And this is why Notre Dame was able to go toe-to-toe with a team like Georgia last year. It's why they were able to go toe-to-toe with a team like Penn State, another team, built physically from the lines out. And, that's why they were able to win. Like the Penn State game, I think it took them a little bit longer to kind of, you know, assert themselves up front just because of the fact that they had played in such a physical game against Georgia and they had one less day. Penn State ended up with a couple more days in between because of the fact that the Sugar Bowl got bumped back a day and all that different kind of stuff. But look, I mean, I did an interview with a Miami guy earlier this week, and he asked about the defensive tackles. And obviously, I asked Marcus Freeman about the defensive tackles specifically. And like this question that is being asked here is not just about the tackles, but it applies as well from Law Dog. The reason Notre Dame has been able to have that kind of success, even though they don't always have it, and I'm talking about the tackles specific, they haven't necessarily, like Howard Cross was not your classic size for a nose guard. Neither is Donovan Heinisch. Neither is Jared Dawson. They're not these big 330-pound space eaters inside. But what Notre Dame makes up for not having that classic size is the depth that we're talking about. The fact that they are able to throw waves of guys at them and stay fresh. And as the game goes on, they were able to win these physical battles, just like Texas A&M last year. I mean, it was a slugfest throughout most of the game. But what happened at the end of the game when Notre Dame needed the push on both sides of the ball, I think because of the fact that they have the depth on the defensive side and some of these other teams don't quite have that same depth and quality as well, and the conditioning. I think that Lauren Lando, is part of this as well, the conditioning that these guys have. But I mean, like look at the ends, for example. Now that we know that Jordan Botelho is going to be available. You've got Boubacar Traore, Junior Tuihalamaka, and Botelho available on one defensive end, and on the other side, you've got Bryce Young, Josh Burnham, and I think Logan Thomas can be, like Young and Burnham can play more every down. Whereas, again, like when it comes to third down passing situation, Logan Thomas gets you some fresh legs and he's quick and he can dip a little bit off the end. They can just throw waves of guys at, both interior and exterior at you. And I think that is going to be a major factor in a game like this. And it'll be a major factor in a couple of weeks against another team like Texas A&M as well.
Agreed. And to kind of, I neglected to talk about the linebackers in this question. I think the real advantage Notre Dame has at the linebacker position is your first wave or your starters are going to be really solid. And then you have the ability to get more athletic on second and long, third and long type downs. So that's the thing is they are going to be fresh at linebacker and defensive end, and they can be so situational and also, get guys a blow here and there and get some fresh legs in.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, again, like when you've got, we're going to see the Rover far less this year, but when you've got Drake Bowen and Jalen Sneed, and then your second unit is Kingston Biliamu Asa and Jaden Osbury, that's a pretty good 1-2 combination. And they won't necessarily, always look like that. You're going to see guys rotating in because they can play at both positions as well. All right, we'll take a timeout. When we come back, we will return with more We In or We Out questions and a lot more Notre Dame football facing Miami talk coming up. Rolling on through the 5 o'clock hour, Budweiser's weekday sports beat with IrishBreakdown.com. I'm Sean Stiers, joined by Jesse Stiers. Crazy day. Micah Parsons traded from the Dallas Cowboys to the Green Bay Packers, and Domer Grizz popped in the YouTube chat with a question. He said, as a Packers fan, should I be happy or frustrated with the Parsons trade? That came out of nowhere. I would be very happy because you got a great player. They're going to pay him now. He's going to get his contract. You got him locked up for however many years it's going to be. 4 years. Is that what you're putting up there, Jess? Jesse is beside himself right now. Look,
what did I tell you a month ago? I said if Jerry messes this up,
I know what you said.
I said I am not going to be a fan this season. The man is young, in his prime, a generational defensive end talent. He has 12 to 13 sacks every season. It's just, this is a colossal fumble. This is even a guy Jerry drafted. I'm surprised that he let him go out of the clutches of his hands.
Well, and that's the thing.
There's so many layers to this, and it's just, I'm so tired of this stubborn, old piece of crap owner.
Language. Dial it down a little bit. I understand your frustration, but yeah, Jerry can't be wrong, and it's his money. That's how he looks at it, and he doesn't want to be told, I think, how to spend his money. And he thought, he obviously tried to strong arm Micah Parsons into a contract agreement. Wanted to circumvent the agent and was not willing to budge on that. To your point, he likes to be right about his draft picks. This is a guy who he drafted in the first round not that long ago, who's on a Hall of Fame type trajectory right now. So it's shocking to me that he's willing to give that up. But I mean, the roster does need retooled because they develop, they build their roster primarily from the draft. So they're getting a couple of first round draft picks back out of it. And, they're not going to have to worry about paying Micah Parsons. What that means for the success of this year's team, maybe he's willing to kind of give up on that. Bobby O'Shea throwing a little shade at Jesse. Are you watching Boise State tonight, or did you schedule the rehearsal dinner for this evening?
I appreciate the jokes here, Bobby, on a very tough day for me. We'll not be watching the Boise State game tonight.
Yes.
Rehearsal dinner is not tonight. Just got the flower bill, though. So if Bobby wants to, pitch in towards the flower bill, I'm all game.
I am Tenzin. I am the son of Ang. This is Indiana, not Arlington. Well, we're talking actually nationally, I think. So, all right, Joe Allen with some questions, some we in, we out questions. That's what we're here for on this show. Over under the number of fake punts and field goals is 1.5. In or out on that?
I'm gonna go under. I don't think Miami will have the gumption.
Are we talking about this game specifically? Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. I was thinking for the season. Go ahead.
No, this has to be for this game. For the season, definitely an over. For this game, I'm gonna take an under. I think if anyone has the gumption to do it, it'll be Notre Dame. I don't think Miami's tricky enough. I don't think they're smart enough, and I don't think that they're willing to roll the dice so early on in a big game.
The other thing is, where special teams, like where the fakes, like if you've noticed, like with Marty Biaggi and Mason, even before, we didn't see as many fakes with Mason. Like, you don't typically get them early in the season, because what usually happens for the special teams coordinator is, what do you see on film that they're showing you that gives the look that, that sets up whatever the fake is, or, like even a block or whatever it happens to be. Usually, now, I mean, you obviously have last year, so you have last year's game film to go on, but again, different set of circumstances coming into a new season. So you typically don't see these things until a few games into the season, when the coaches have a body of work to look at and they say, okay, we've got this play, this look that they're giving us here will allow us to run that play. So I'm going to be under for this game as well on the fake
just
punts.
Because there's not enough looks, right? Like, you just don't know what you're going to get. So there's nothing to practice for if you don't know what you're going to get because there's no tendency to study.
you might run straight into a linebacker or a defensive back standing there. Like you don't know, what their tendencies are, what they're going to do at the snap. So over under the number of sacks on Beck, 2.5, in and or out on that.
Oh, I think that's a good number. I'd like to be in. My biasy fandom wants to say in, but Carson Beck is still a really good quarterback. I think he's going to know when to get the ball out, and I just think he's going to be good about not taking sacks. I think Notre Dame might get to him a time or two, but I don't know about 3 sacks. It's a good number. It's a good line, like I said.
Well, and I think the aspect of this, as great as Notre Dame's secondary is, the aspect of this matchup that also intrigues me is when Miami is on offense, that air raid offense that they run, and the tendencies that are, like get the ball out quickly, rhythm, timing, and that kind of stuff. So does that frustrate some of Notre Dame's pass rush? How does that come into play? Does it negate some of the pass rush wherever it happens to be? And we also, like as we've said this entire offseason, we haven't seen how Chris Ash is actually going to call the game. We know he's going to dial up fewer blitzes than Al Golden, but will he still dial up a timely blitz or two? How's that all going to look? I would say 2 sacks would probably be where I'm at for this opener because of those different elements. So I would have to be out on that. Joe also says over under total yards of offense for Notre Dame, 385.5, in or out.
So last year, the Notre Dame offense averaged 198 passing yards and 200 rushing yards. So you're at right around
398. Yeah.
398. Another good number. A lot of people, I think it kind of came up. I really think Notre Dame Miami is going to be a little bit of a defensive, not stalemate, but a little bit more of a defensive battle early on. I think Notre Dame obviously tries to establish the run. How comfortable Marcus Freeman is with letting CJ Carr cut loose the ball. I really only see Notre Dame like excessively throwing the ball if they get down, and the game is getting, close to the third, fourth quarter and they're still down 7-10 points. But I think Notre Dame is going to be like every other Marcus Freeman team, a run-heavy team at first. They're going to make Miami, show that they can put numbers in the box and stop the run, and that should open up some of the passing game. But, I know Marcus Freeman. I know it's the first game of the season. It's on the road. It's in a tough environment. So, most of their yards are going to come on the ground. I think that it's going to be really close to that kind of split from last season, 200 to 200, maybe 250 passing yards. Man, I'm handcuffed.
I'm going to make it easy for you. Go ahead.
I'm going to go over because I think their running attack is going to rack up a lot of yards in this game.
Yeah, I think this is a good solid number as well. DJ agrees with that. 285.5 is the number. You figure even 200 passing yards. I think that's figuring conservatively. And by the way, like we were talking about props and stuff like that. If you look at CJ Carr's number on FanDuel, I think it's only like 185.5 or something like that, which I think is a little bit on the low side. So, but you figure 200 passing yards. Can you get 186 rushing yards? I say yeah. So I'm going to be over 385.5, but I think it's a pretty good number. That's kind of right on the mark there, I think. Cloud of dust, in or out. Carson Beck throws 2 interceptions.
I think it depends on the way the game goes. I think early on he will throw an interception. And if they're really down late trying to press the ball, in obvious passing situations, I do think he'll throw another one. So for the heck of it, I'm going to say yes. I'm in on him throwing 2 interceptions.
I'll be in on it as well. I think that they can make him make mistakes. His completion percentage got worse last year at Georgia, and his interceptions jumped up dramatically without Ladd and without Bowers. Did you have something to add?
Well, he doesn't have a Georgia offensive line. He doesn't have Georgia skill position players.
Well, Miami thinks that this line stacks up with the Georgias and the Notre Dames, and
we'll see.
The sack numbers were relatively similar last year. Cam Ward was sacked 22 times in basically 12 plus games, because remember, he started the bowl game and then he got his record and then he left the game and all that different kind of stuff. Remember that whole controversy? So it was 12 plus games. He was sacked 22 times. Riley Leonard sacked 20 times last year. Now, again, that number is skewed a little bit because of the fact that Leonard was so mobile and all that stuff and could bail himself out of some trouble. But I think obviously if you can pressure Carson Beck, you can make him make mistakes. That's my point. In or out, CJ Carr throws 2 touchdown passes.
I'm going to be out. I think he gets 1, and I think the running backs are. I'm all in on the running backs. Like there is nothing that screams more than running backs dominating this game. I think you get like 3 touchdowns on the ground and 1 touchdown through the air.
I'm going to go in. I'm going to say Carr, they'll still get a rushing touchdown or 2, but I'm going to say CJ Carr throws his first 2 career touchdown passes against the Hurricanes. So I'm in. This kind of goes to the one we were just talking about. Notre Dame has 5 sacks. I'll be out on that.
Yeah, I'm out on that. That's way too many.
A little bit too many, I think. If they do get to that 5, I think 3.5. Like, is that what Joe set the number at on sacks? Is that where he said it before?
I think 2.5.
He went with 2.5. Yeah, I think 2.5, 3.5 is probably the number. I'll definitely be under on 5, though. I don't think he gets there. Domer Grizz, Miami's schedule is pretty easy overall, but those 2 back-to-back northern road trips in November could be their downfall. Your confidence they would make the playoffs would go up if their September and November schedules were flip-flopped. We in or we out. So the November road trips he's talking about, they finished the season November 22nd at Virginia Tech and then at Pittsburgh November 29th. They've got SMU on the road to begin November, Syracuse and NC State, and of course, Notre Dame, Bethune-Cookman, South Florida, and Florida. I mean, I don't know if they want to have Florida at the end.
Or Notre Dame on the back end.
Even if so, yeah. So, like, even though those are home games, I don't think that they would want Notre Dame and Florida at the end. I think Virginia Tech and Pitt are very manageable with what they've got. So
I would rather take my shot at Notre Dame and Florida early on in the season when they're not really, full steam rolling as a team yet, right? Like, CJ Carr is young. You got a new defensive coordinator. Notre Dame still is going to Notre Dame still has stuff to figure out as well. Like in-game things. Like it's one thing to feel like you've got it in practice, but until you're actually, face to face with an opponent, you're still working out some kinks as well. So I think Notre Dame was going to be more of a powerhouse later in the season. So I would not want to play Notre Dame or Florida in November compared to early. I think you have a better chance to get to them in a potential upset right now.
I agree. More from Domer Grizz. If Notre Dame wins the coin toss, they should defer. We in or we out. Now, here's the pros, he says. It gives the crowd a chance to quiet down, assuming our defense makes the stop. 2, you have the chance for the rare back-to-back possessions. The cons, Carr has to sit on the sideline getting more nervous or amped up. 2, the crowd will be even louder if the D somehow gives up points on the opening drive. 3, you lose the chance for Love to house the opening kickoff, which would quiet the crowd which would quiet the crowd the most and jumpstart his Heisman campaign.
There's only one answer to this.
I'm deferring.
Oh, I'm 100% deferring. I never like to take the ball. I think it's great early on to let, and this is strategic too. Notre Dame has a really good defense.
Yes.
And
you got a rookie quarterback. I
would let my defense go out there, let CJ Carr kind of let those nerves settle on the sideline a little bit, let the defense get a stop, get the ball back, and then punch the ball into the end zone. And then get the ball at halftime again. I will never, ever be a guy who says you should take the opening kickoff. Like literally 9 times, like it has to be special circumstance or, something in the game plan says we need to take the ball first, but I'm always going to be a defer to half. Well, it would be sweet to see Jeremiah Love, house the opening kickoff and really silence the crowd. But I think in Notre Dame's best interest, you let your most experienced group go out on the field and handle this situation, because majority of that defense played the entire playoffs last season. They know how to handle themselves in big games.
Yeah. I mean, like I am Tenzin is saying, score first, steal.
It's just not worth the
There's
risk.
no guarantee. Like the known is your defense and the secondary specifically. The unknown is still CJ Carr. No matter what no matter how much we think that he's going to be good, he is still, we haven't seen him do it in a road environment, like in a game period, but in a road environment and all those different factors. I would much rather put my defense on the field first, get Carson Beck rattled, and have the opportunity to, at least in some part, take the Miami crowd out of the game that way. I'm much more confident in my secondary and its ability to shut down Carson Beck. So I would go for the stop first, and then you get the ball to start the second half. That's the way I would roll it. And I think that as a defensive coach, I would think that Marcus Freeman will probably be thinking along those lines as well, especially road game. Like if it's a home game, maybe you consider taking the ball first, but road game, I'm putting my defense on the field because that's the strength of the team right now going into this season. Take our final timeout this hour. Back to wrap up with some more Notre Dame football we in, we out questions coming up next. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. Running right up as we get closer to the end of the first hour of the show. Sean Stiers, Jesse Stiers. It's Budweiser's weekday sports beat with IrishBreakdown.com. We're answering Notre Dame football we in or we out questions, most of them related to this weekend's game at Miami, kicking off at 7:30. Our coverage starts at 3 o'clock right here on Sports Radio WSBT, as well as the WSBT app and YouTube channel. JG Whitetown asked, Notre Dame controls the lines of scrimmage on both sides and wins by 20. We in or we out on that? You're on mute.
I do think that they control the line of scrimmage on both sides, but I do not see them winning by 20 points or more. So I have to be out.
Yeah, I'm out on that as well. And I just exactly what you said. I think that they do a good job controlling the lines of scrimmage, but I don't see them winning by 20 plus. ND's defense and special teams will score at least 200 points this season, including field goals and extra points. That is a lot of points.
I mean, if you look at the regular season alone, 12 games, you're looking at north of like 14, 15 points a game just off special teams and defense. So, including field goals and extra points. I feel like that's still a lot, like you were saying. So I'll be out on this.
I think so as well. Like if you get a field goal a game, that's 36 points right there. You get a touchdown per game, like 3 touchdowns per game would give you another 36. So that's 72. And then, just factoring in, like some special teams and defense. I still think that's a little bit on the high side. So I will be out on 200 points for the special teams and defense. That's an intriguing question, though. From BK's personal chef, we in or we out, it is more likely that Notre Dame blows Miami out than Miami blowing Notre Dame out.
Yes, it is 100% more likely that Notre Dame blows out Miami than Miami blowing out Notre Dame. Notre Dame's defense, I think, is just too good. In order for Miami to blow out Notre Dame, I think that their offense would just have to be absolutely stagnant, and Miami would have to have a stellar game plan to shut down the best running back in the country.
Yeah, totally in. Notre Dame's defense is too good for that. I don't see it happening. Again, like the only way that it happens is a bunch of mistakes. That's a bunch of mistakes, turnovers on Notre Dame's part. I just feel like that is the only path to a Miami victory. We in and we out. We watch Jadarian Price get a rushing touchdown where Love acts as a decoy, either running or on a receiving route, or we watch a play action TD where Love decoys as a rusher, which drops Miami linebackers down, opening up the second zone for a bullet over the middle. Very specific touchdown requests. You in or you out on either one of those scenarios?
Yeah, I'm just going through them again. So Price basically gets a decoy touchdown when Love is acting as, basically what this question is asking is, are both these guys going to be on the field at the same time, first of all? And second of all, is one of them going to act as a decoy so the other one can get a touchdown?
Likely.
I'm actually in on the general principle of the idea, but this exact scenario that was pitched here, I don't know if I can be in or out on. I think we're going to see some very deliberate packages that include Price and Love being on the field and using them to kind of, counter off each other, a little Batman and Robin action.
Yeah. And that's where it gets exciting, I think, with the prospect of the 20 and 21 personnel that we've all been clamoring for, and that hopefully we see. I think we will, because we've talked about this week, Jesse. Miami's linebackers are the weakness of their defense. How much jeopardy do both Love and Price, or Love, whether it's Aeneas Williams or whoever it happens to be, how much jeopardy does that put them in to have to account for both of those guys on the field at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a tremendous amount of pressure, to be honest with you, because, it's just that they both provide such a home run kind of skill set where they touch the ball and they can be off to the races. It's who do you want you can't cover both of them, right? You can't put all your resources to both of them, and it's likely that both of them in one-on-one situations is going to beat you. I listened to Marcus Freeman today on the Pivot podcast, great podcast, and just hearing him talk about Jeremiah Love and his competitiveness and his bag of tools of, well, you want to go low on Jeremiah Love, he's going to go over you. If you want to go high, he's going to put his shoulder down and run you over.
Yep.
Right? That's what I mean. It's just not one person can beat these guys in the open field. And so if you leave them, basically, you got to account extra for one of them. And if the other guy is going to be kind of have that ability to hit the home run when you don't.
Let's try to get through the rest of these questions here in the next 4 minutes if we can. In or out, this win will be the most important win Notre Dame has in the regular season.
I got to be out on this. I think Texas A&M and USC are potentially just as important, but obviously you want to start the season 1-0 in a ranked matchup.
Agree. I'll be out on that, and I think don't write off USC's offense.
There's just a lot of talent out there.
Yeah, exactly. We in or we out. This is from ND Forever 72. Offensive tackles significantly better in pass protection than last year.
Yeah, I think that getting more experience, having a year under your belt, and most importantly, Notre Dame's offense struggled in camp because, again, this is one of the best defenses in the country. And so iron sharpens iron. These tackles have had the privilege of going against a really good defense every day during camp.
Yes, I am in on that as well. I think that you're going to see a significant uptick in their play. In or out with Traore and Botello back in the defensive end rotation, at least 3 sacks, 8+ quarterback pressures in this game. I've got to be out. Those are very big numbers, and we've talked about the sacks. I think that the sacks only come in the fourth quarter if Notre Dame is leading and Miami is trying to play catch-up, which could happen. 8 pressures is a lot, though, and this is a good offensive line, and this is a Miami team that also wants to be able to pound the football. So I've got to be out on those numbers. Do you concur?
Yeah, I think 3 sacks is pretty good. Eight pressures might be getting up there, but it's just a little too rich early on.
From night shift, in or out, conservative game plan on offense with a freshman quarterback.
Do we not know Marcus Freeman?
You can lock this one up. Where's Theismann's Heisman? Says in or out, Drake Bowen, 10 tackles, a sack, and an interception.
I'd be out on that. If you did 10 tackles and a sack, I'd be very close to being in.
Agree. That would be where I would be in on both of those numbers right there. Because, again, don't forget about Miami's running game. This isn't just going to be Carson Beck slinging it all over the place. In or out, Love and Price both score on the ground and in the air.
Sorry, I think these are just like those like big bet type, like plus 3,000 type bets. I think they both get in on the ground.
In or out after Sunday night's game, CJ Carr has such a good game. ESPN never mentioned Arch Manning again. Sorry, I've got to be out on that.
Ouch.
Where the hype machine is going to go with that. In or out, Carson Beck, terribly inconsistent, and after the game admits he's not 100% back from Tommy John surgery.
The elbow will be brought up in some way after they lose.
I think so as well. I will be totally in on that. I've got to be in on those. All right, great questions tonight. That's it for We In or We Out. Coming up, hour number 2, rapid fire. Some news on the Notre Dame USC front. We will get to that when we come back. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. It's hour 2 of Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com, and that can mean only one thing. It is rapid fire time. I suppose it can also mean that Jesse is still very frustrated by today's events with the news of Micah Parsons being traded to the Green Bay Packers. Raymond did check in for a health and wellness check to see how we were doing after the Micah Parsons news. I can guarantee you Jesse is no better now than he was an hour ago.
I just need to turn my phone off for the rest of the night.
Are you getting bombed? Are people pestering you right now? Are you looking at
pestering, reading people's tweets, understanding how much of an embarrassment this is? And, it's just, I think the number one thing that I'm seeing right now, and I don't want to go too long on this, but, no other owner can make this decision because no other owner is the GM. Jerry can make this move and just move on like nothing happened, and there's never going to be repercussions. Any other GM makes this decision, they're on the hook if it doesn't pan out. Jerry just wipes his hands and said, I'm Jerry. I can do what I want, and Jerry's always going to think he's right, and no one's ever going to tell him regardless.
You still haven't watched any of the Netflix series, have you?
Not going to now either. No
you
reason.
Should at least watch the first, like up until like the Jimmy fallout, because the man obviously believes, like it. If you believe it, it's not a lie, Jerry. Like that is Jerry Jones to a T. That's obviously a Seinfeld quote, so it's not like Jerry talking to himself. But, he believes that he was the architect of, the early 90s, 3 Super Bowls in 4 years team. It's like he was in the room with Jimmy Johnson while Jimmy Johnson was actually making the moves and calling those shots. But he believes since he's the one who had to ultimately okay him that, it was they were actually his moves. Okay, let's get off that. Let's talk some Notre Dame football. Some big news potentially out of Southern California. USC athletic director Jennifer Cohen told the Los Angeles Times that the Trojans have amended their offer to Notre Dame to extend their annual series with the Irish to a long-term extension rather than just a 1-year extension, which was what USC was offering previously. They had initially offered to extend the series through next year and revisit its future beyond that at a later date. Cohen says that the date the game is played is currently the biggest issue right now for USC to get a deal done. Here's the quote from USC athletic director Jennifer Cohen in the LA Times. It's not very typical that a P4 school would travel back and forth across the country for a non-conference game in the middle of October, Cohen said. Show me who else is doing that and doing the kind of travel we're doing. It's a cool tradition to play at the end of the year, but then those are back-to-back rivalry games with a conference championship, and our opponent doesn't play in a conference championship. They have a lot more flexibility in scheduling than we do. We're in a bigger conference that doesn't have the same level of ability to protect us in the way they schedule us for that type of game. End quote from Jennifer Cohen, the USC athletic director. So if you're Notre Dame and USC is willing to sign a long-term contract, but the concession is you have to move the game to the beginning of the season, are you in or are you out on that, Jesse?
I'm in on it, but I just need to go off on a rant here for a second. USC is so soft. Like this is so no, seriously, like you are complaining because you of travel because you put yourself in the Big Ten conference because now you have to travel across the country more. And Notre Dame's just another game that you have to travel across the country in the Midwest for. It's going to be a little chilly. It's going to be a little cold. And you got to play other Big Ten teams in the chilly and the cold. And so Notre Dame has this privilege of insulating themselves wherever they want to put the USC game. But USC, we're so insulated by these tough games, and we don't want to lose back-to-back games at the end of the season because that means we won't get to make the playoff or a conference championship. You don't deserve to be in these games or in the playoff or any type of championship if you can't beat playoff level teams or championship level teams. So if I'm Notre Dame, I say we don't give a crap when you want to play this game. We'll play it anywhere, any time of the year because we're a better program than you. We've been a better program than you for the last 2 decades. We've been to national championships. We've been to playoff appearances. USC has none of that. So what is USC doing? They're trying to figure out a way to keep Notre Dame on a schedule and make their life easier at the end of the day. How can this become more insulated? It's such a load of crap that they're willing to throw away all of this rivalry and tradition over the last 100 years just because they don't want to travel a little bit extra in October.
I don't disagree with anything that you're saying. And case in point, she's complaining about travel, like show me another team that travels to the middle of the country or across the country in the middle of conference play and in the middle of October. And then, makes the point about the fact that Notre Dame is not in a conference, as if that means that Notre Dame doesn't have to do any traveling. We know where Notre Dame is, and we know where the ACC footprint is. We also know where Los Angeles is. And every year, Notre Dame has gone to the West Coast to play either in Los Angeles against Southern Cal or in Palo Alto against Stanford, right? So, they're willing to make that trick, and that's a long flight out there every November. Here's 2018, though. Do you remember the 2018 season? October 27th, Notre Dame plays Navy in San Diego, California, Southern California, more southern than Los Angeles. November 3rd, they play Northwestern in Evanston, the Chicago suburb. November 10th, they play Florida State at Notre Dame Stadium. November 17th, they go to the East Coast to play Syracuse at Yankee Stadium. The following week, November 24th, they are back in Southern California playing Southern Cal in Los Angeles. Are you going to tell me that travel schedule is any more difficult than what USC and Jennifer Cohen is talking about right now? Just because Notre Dame is not in the conference does not mean they don't travel. They traditionally travel more than anyone else in the country because of the fact they are not in a conference. Now, to the point, though, the question that I asked was, would you make this concession if you're Notre Dame? If the concession that USC is making is, we'll give you the long-term extension, we will sign a long-term deal, but we've got to play this game at the front of the schedule, I would be totally in on that if I'm Notre Dame. I would do that. Do I in a negotiation, there's got to be some give and take on both sides. And so if USC only wants to do a one-year deal because of whatever uncertainty, but they're offering now, we'll do a long-term deal, but you've got to move the game to the front of the schedule. That's a concession that I make if I'm Notre Dame, because I want the rivalry to continue. It's not going to hurt you to play it at the front of the schedule instead of October and November. I realize that's how Notre Dame has wanted it. They've got it that way for a long time, but I've said this before. Part of the reason that Notre Dame was able to do that every year trip to the West Coast with USC and Stanford is because those two schools were in the Pac-12 together. And when they were in the Pac-12 together, if you look at their schedules from when they were in the Pac-12, they would play each other at the front of the schedule in September to accommodate that. And that's how they were able to pull off making those switches in the middle of their conference play by playing, in South Bend in October and then the games on the West Coast in November. They don't have that anymore because they're in different conferences now. Now, if Notre Dame maybe could find another travel partner in the Big Ten for USC, maybe they could accommodate that. But if I'm Notre Dame and I want it to continue, I would be in on playing it in September. They used to play Michigan in September at the front of the schedule. That was always a big game. It'll be a big game, if it's USC as well in September instead of October and November.
Listen, I don't disagree with anything you said. I would be on board with Notre Dame actually opening the season with USC every year if that's what they wanted to do. I'm just disgusted by USC's lack of spine. Yeah. It's pathetic. And I will say this is the last comment I have on this. If this contract was up during the Weiss and Willingham eras, USC would not be throwing a fit like they are right now. And I get it, college football is different and the playoffs are different, and it might be a little bit of a different comparison, but USC would not have this whole runaround if they were on that tear like they were when Willingham and Weiss were here. It's just, there's just no way. The success of Notre Dame has really driven this home for USC.
I think so as well. No, you're absolutely right. Weiss and Willingham and Dave. I guess Davey was shown the door, once Pete Carroll, established himself down there in Los Angeles. But Weiss and Willingham never begged, for Kevin White to try to back out of the series with USC just because Pete Carroll was almost won 3 consecutive national championships. Like they weren't trying to back out of this whole deal, and that's ultimately what this comes down to. It started with Lincoln Riley, and doesn't want the schedule any tougher than it needs to be, and that's where they are right now. But again, like, they're willing to do it, so I would make it happen. It's like you can't hold out, because I see people saying, "Oh, don't cave into them." Look, you can't hold out for everything. Notre Dame wants this rivalry to continue, and again, they're willing to do a long-term extension, it sounds like, if Notre Dame is willing to be more flexible on when the game is played. And they're not. There's nothing in this article in the LA Times about the neutral site games and stuff like that USC has been pushing either. So maybe you don't have to do that. Maybe you keep it on campus, which I think would make everybody happy as well. All right, so Notre Dame offensive coordinator Mike Denbrock was asked yesterday about what typically translates into success for a quarterback making his first start. And here is what Denbrock said, quote, "I think it's a little bit of a mentality of I'm going to get the first down, which means I'm not going to necessarily take a lot of chances with deep balls every time I get an opportunity to throw one. I'm going to find the people around me that I know are talented, and I'm going to make sure that they get the ball in their hands and let those guys help me, and not a feeling as a quarterback of ever having to take the weight of the world on your shoulders and be the sole purpose why we are being successful." End quote. What does that say to you, Jesse?
I think that says at the end of fall camp, Mike Denbrock sat CJ Carr down and said, "Listen here, buddy. I want you to be the starting quarterback, but you need to understand what that means right now and
Right.
what Marcus Freeman is looking for. Because at the end of the day, Marcus Freeman's my boss and he's your boss, right? Like that's what it boils down to. And so what that says to me is CJ Carr needs to come out and hit his layups. No
Yes.
3-pointers, no deep 3-pointers, hit his layups, and don't play hero ball. Let your talent around you do the work for you. And as the game progresses, as the season progresses, we can start comfortably opening up the field more, opening up the playbook more. But right now, your job is to get first downs. We're not worried about touchdowns. We're not worried about the downfield bombs. We're here to do our 111, as Tommy Rees said, to do our freaking job and just hit our layups. Hit our layups. When it's time to hit a 3-pointer, we'll hit a 3-pointer. But the layups are what's going to set up the 3-pointer. So don't play hero ball. Don't play out of your shoes. Let everyone else around you be a resource for you, help you win this game.
Not every play has to be a touchdown. Not every play has to be a highlight play. I think that's, because Marcus Freeman talked about the confidence that CJ Carr has earlier this week. And he said sometimes it can be overconfident, like it can veer into that. Not every play has to be a highlight play. There are plenty of plays that he can make with his arm that don't all have to be 50 yards downfield, because, like Joe M is saying, so basically be Ian Book, again,
that's a big drastic stretch.
Right. There are still, without trying to hit home runs with every throw, there are still throws that CJ Carr is going to be able to make that Ian Book wasn't able to make. And we're talking about, to Jesse's point, we're talking about here at the beginning. Let's run this offense. You've got a great offensive line. You've got great running backs. You've got great receivers. You've got a great tight end in Eli Raridan. Trust those guys and know that getting a first down and moving the chains is good enough sometimes. Like you don't have to take a shot on every play, because I think that is part of what made that quarterback competition so close with all those interceptions that we heard about during, fall training camp. And I found it very interesting that when given the opportunity, what's that?
It's a very pointed response
Yeah.
at the issue that everyone was making with CJ Carr.
Right. Exactly. Without being asked about CJ Carr specifically throwing interceptions during training camp, Mike Denbrock came out and addressed it by saying, I'm going to get the first down. I don't have to take a bunch of chances with deep balls every time there's a chance. That doesn't say you're never going to. And I think there's also a specific kind of play where you're going to look for some of those. Like we talked about on yesterday's show. Probably a more, avoid deep middle of the field where the safety can come over and get involved. Those are where we've seen CJ Carr in practice and in the blue gold game in the spring. That's where we've seen CJ Carr get into some trouble with some of those interceptions on those deep balls with the safety downfield. There's still like he can work the perimeter, like that. And that's something that Notre Dame's offense hasn't always been able to do as well. And especially when you've got a guy like Malachi Fields on that boundary, there's a lot of stuff that he can do that doesn't have to be deep down the middle of the field. There's still plenty of deep shots he can make. It's the kind of deep shots I think that you can make. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll continue with more rapid fire, including more comments from Mike Denbrock and CJ Carr coming up next. Budweiser's weekday sports beat with Irish Breakdown continues on Sports Radio WSBT, continuing with rapid fire. So I've got another comment from Mike Denbrock from his post-practice press conference yesterday. He was asked if he's more comfortable with CJ Carr going into this season opener than he was last year going into the season opener with Riley Leonard, after Leonard, of course, missed all of spring practice due to that foot injury. And Denbrock said, quote, 100% yes. I mean, I really feel like their ability to mature within the system that we run, we're way farther down the road with all that. Now what we aren't further down the road with is in-game real-life snaps and experience. So how does that balance out? I think we're all anxious to find out, end quote. So what do you think about that? Jesse.
Your mic was going in and out there for a second. So I was trying to catch pieces and then also try to read pieces at the same time. So sorry, I'm just trying to get caught up on that.
Gotcha. So he is more comfortable. Mike Denbrock is more comfortable going into this season opener with CJ Carr than he was last year's season opener with Riley Leonard. What are your thoughts on that?
I think my thoughts on that is Mike Denbrock really didn't know what to expect out of Riley Leonard, because you have to remember he was coming off the injuries, coming out of a camp where he didn't get a lot of a practice inside of Mike Denbrock's offense. CJ Carr is a guy who's been around for 2 seasons now, right? Yes, he hasn't played in games yet, but he's also had the opportunity to really learn and engulf himself in this offense. So I think Riley Leonard, it's funny because I think Riley Leonard has more of the mobility that Denbrock wants, but CJ Carr has more of the passing attack that Mike Denbrock wants. So it's like if you could combine the two, that would be great. But I think ultimately what this shows is I think Mike Denbrock has a really good grasp of who CJ Carr is as a quarterback and his skill set, and really how to tailor the offense around it. And I think last season we heard him say it after the NIU game, I got to throw stuff out. I got to figure out what's really good for Riley Leonard and what's going to help this offense. I don't think he was, certain on what plays worked really well with Riley Leonard last year, but with CJ Carr, he's much more comfortable of knowing what works and how his offense can be tailored to CJ Carr's skills. Because
Carr has been in the offense for 2 springs and 2 training camps now, like under Mike Denbrock. Riley Leonard didn't have that. Leonard got to sit there in the meeting rooms during spring practice, but again, he wasn't able to play because of the injury. So they never got to work some of those things out. And I think that you're basically talking about, even though it's a year plus that he's been here, again, because it's 2 springs and 2 training camps, you're talking about almost 2 years worth of knowledge that CJ Carr has built up, being in Mike Denbrock's offense. So I think that is a huge advantage. Now, to Denbrock's point, again, what they don't have is game reps and actual game experience. So those are the things that you find out along the way. But all those intangibles and just the cerebral stuff, the stuff, inside the gray matter is obviously there for CJ Carr, and Mike Denbrock feels really good about it. Now, it's curious that you brought up what you just brought up about throwing stuff out, because CJ Carr was asked about meeting with Mike Denbrock and if he's comfortable telling his coach that he's not comfortable with certain things in the game plan. And here's what CJ Carr said, quote, Coach Denbrock and I have done the Riley meets in the morning, and we hit it yesterday, we hit it today, and just being on the same page with him about what he expects from a play, what I expect from a play, has been really helpful to be able to go out on the field and test it out. And I think it's going to really help us against Miami. Scale of 1 to 10, how important is it that Carr has that level of comfort that he can tell his coach, well, I really don't like this. This is, more my speed. This is more my comfort level.
Yeah, this is a 10 out of 10. I think this is the most important aspect of the player and coach relationship, having the transparency of, hey, here's what I'm comfortable with. Here's what, I don't necessarily, think this works towards my skill set. And just to kind of draw a comparison, my sophomore year in college, once I was kind of working myself into that, second string kind of, and potentially even getting some starter snaps at the linebacker position, is I got invited to meetings like this. We would meet at, during game week, 6-7 o'clock in the morning, and me and my position coach, and along with basically the other, traveling linebackers or the guys who are in the starting rotation, would watch film and literally go over and he'd be like, okay, here's what I'm seeing. Here's what I want you guys to see. Here's what I want you to look for. Here's how I think this play should break down defensively. And I imagine it's the same scenario with Denbrock. They're watching plays, they're watching practice film, and Denbrock says, hey, here's where I want your eyes to be. Here's how the play needs to, develop. Here's where your reads need to be. And at that point, Carr can say, okay, I feel comfortable with that. Or, hey, coach, I'm really not good with that read. I think that puts me in kind of a tight spot. Can we maybe, go away from that? So to me, having that open dialogue, having that transparency is really crucial, because again, Mike Denbrock can game plan and call plays that are really going to get CJ Carr moving and build his confidence that he needs, but also being effective. You can't just run an offense just because CJ Carr, wants you to. You still have to be effective and set things up naturally. So having that open communication is really huge.
And I don't know how much of this kind of stuff he was doing like at LSU with Jaden Daniels, or, going back to Cincinnati with Desmond Ridder, just other quarterbacks, but it makes sense. Like Mike Denbrock potentially learned a lesson with Riley Leonard last year that, hey, we need to do this kind of stuff, because again, like where the passing game was last year, it never completely, I think, got to, to where anyone probably thought it was going to be, but they were able to make up for it with some different things with Riley Leonard's legs. They don't have that same luxury with CJ Carr, both physically or, once it comes to Saturday. Like there's going to be a lot of learning on the fly from CJ Carr because of the fact that he's a rookie quarterback and he hasn't been out there in it, just the one game experience that he's got. He's never started a game before, but you can't be like learning those lessons to the degree that they were with Riley Leonard last year, because you can't afford an NIU type situation. When you've got a rookie quarterback, you're so much farther behind the 8 ball at that point than you were with a veteran quarterback who was able to work some things out. But again, just a huge benefit that CJ Carr has been in this system for as long as he has already. And I think that they've got a great feel for each other, for what works and what doesn't work. One final thought on that. It's blank that they call their little get-togethers Riley meets.
I think it's hilarious. And it really, I think, is forthcoming of showing the lessons learned from that NIU game and how much that game lingers kind of in everyone's, that game is never going to be forgotten. And we're going to draw back to it so many times. Again, I listened to Marcus Freeman on the Pivot podcast, and it came up again and again, the reoccurring lessons that can be taught because of that game. And so I think it's really funny, but again, it all stems from that NIU game.
Yep, exactly. All right. I think we might have to audible on one here for a second, because I'm not seeing the audio that I thought that I had. But Carr, by the way, he was asked if they meet for coffee and bagels and that kind of thing, and he said country music and football. So I guess like the football we can obviously take. The country music part of it, not really up either one of our.
No, I wish they had at least like some oldies rock taste, but country music just isn't cutting it for me.
No, not quite there. Not quite there. The Athletic put together a list of 25 under-the-radar coaches to know before this year's coaching carousel begins. Max Bulla, Notre Dame linebackers coach, made the list. They said the former Michigan State linebacker has risen quickly through the ranks and could become a defensive coordinator soon. People around Notre Dame have been impressed by his move from graduate assistant to linebackers coach in South Bend in 2 seasons since coming over from Alabama. It's blank, Jesse, that Max Bulla is on this list.
Yeah, as someone who's very much entrenched into the linebacker situation, seeing how they've developed and seeing Max Bola. He's been one of my favorite coaches to watch kind of ascend through the ranks. And honestly, I think it's fantastic that Max Bola is on this list because it continues to show not only Notre Dame's development of recruits, on-field production, but also, their coaching development at the end of the day. And Marcus Freeman has said this before, a mark of a successful program is when your coaches are also starting to, rise in the ranks and potentially start to kind of go elsewhere for bigger opportunities. So, we saw this with Dylan McCullough moving on. No one wanted to see it. I'm drawing a blank. We know that, Mike Mickens is highly thought of and sought after. So the more success that Notre Dame has, the more that they're going to run into this situation of young coaches ascending, rather quickly and probably moving on to bigger positions at some point. So to me, while it sucks, it's kind of a double-edged sword because it's a mark of a good program when you're developing really good coaches along with really good players.
Yeah, I think it's great for Max Bola, but it's like, oh, here's another young talented coach that Notre Dame, might lose. Stymie is asking, was Mickens on that list too? He wasn't, and this was I'm trying to remember. I think it was it was under the radar coaches is how they termed it. I don't think Mike Mickens is under the radar anymore.
Not at this point.
Yeah, after last offseason. I think that Max Bola obviously qualifies, but like when you look at both the recruiting of the linebacker position and the development of the linebackers, since Max Bola has been there, you could see why he would be on a list like that. And, again, it's like the more successful your program is, the more they're going to come after your assistant coaches. Marcus Freeman knows this very well. So, it's actually, as frustrating as it might be when you're having so much success, both recruiting and otherwise, it's great, but it's like, oh, now you're going to lose this guy. ND Sailor says Al Washington too. Again, I don't think that Al Washington qualifies as under the radar because just an off season ago, he was interviewing for a head coaching position at Boston College. So I think that he is squarely on people's radar, but that's, again, like a very talented coaching staff that Marcus Freeman has here at Notre Dame. And, that's again, it's going to happen when you're that successful. All right. I found the soundbite that I'm looking for that I was missing just a second ago. And so I'm going to put this up right now. Marcus Freeman was asked this week about Notre Dame's ability to get pressure on the quarterback with its front four without blitzing much. And here is what he had to say.
It's a great challenge when you're facing an offensive line like we're going to see. Now, our O-line is a good offensive line, and our defense every day has to go against our offensive line and try to create pressure with four guys. And so it'll be no different as we get ready to play on Sunday. We have to be able to generate a pass rush with four guys. And if we can't, then it's going to be a long night, but we also have to find ways to, maybe we have to add a fifth, maybe add a sixth, maybe add a seventh. And so I think getting pressure on a quarterback is vital for us to have success defensively.
All right. So can they get pressure with four? My question to you, Jesse, will Notre Dame's coverage be so good that it helps the pass rush get home with the fewer blitzes?
That's the age-old question, right? Every head coach would say, well, if we can get pressure with four and play zone on the backside and really, mess with the quarterback pre-snap and rotate coverage, that's every coach's dream. You're going to start out and probably lead that, and if that doesn't work, you're going to start bringing five, and then maybe after that you start bringing some six-man pressures. For me, I do think that Notre Dame's strong point on defense is their secondary. I mean, you have, two preseason All-Americans essentially. You have at the cornerback position, you have a very proven safety. And then your other safety position is backfilled with a lot of talent, right? And experience too. So, I do think that them being really good in coverage is going to allow them to get home on maybe 4 or 5 man pressures. But that's the kind of tightrope that you're always playing as a defensive coordinator. And do we want to bring 4 here? Do we want to, mix it up and bring 6 here? So that to me is going to be really an indicator of how well Chris Ash does in his first game as defensive coordinator, how much he needs to bring pressure, and can he create pressure with 4 or 5-man fronts?
Yeah. I mean, if you can, great. I mean, if you can, you're going to be a great team. But like Stymie is saying in the YouTube chat, I don't see Beck holding the ball to give up coverage sacks. I think that's, especially in this offense, he's going to want to get it out quickly. And I don't think you can just sit back and play coverage all night, as great as Notre Dame's secondary is. At some point, you're going to have to bring some pressures from some different places that Carson Beck is not expecting it, because he is a veteran quarterback. He's been around the block a couple times. So, yeah, like it would be great if you could just rely on the secondary, but I don't think that you can do that all night long. You're going to have to bring some pressures at some point. We'll take our last time out and then back to wrap up Rapid Fire on Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. Winding down Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com and Rapid Fire with Jesse Stiers, Sean Stiers, Notre Dame and Miami. Kickoff 7:30 this Sunday night right here on Sports Radio WSBT. Our game day coverage starts at 3 o'clock Eastern time. We'll be starting before every Notre Dame game. They'll be on for 3.5 hours. Tim, Jim, Eric, and Tyler before the Irish take on the Hurricanes Sunday night. Special guests each week, of course, all season long, including Tony Rice and Mike Golick Jr. for show number 1. So tune in all season long for the revamped, all-new game day show before every Notre Dame football game all season long. Again, they start at 3 Eastern time here on Sports Radio WSBT this Sunday, Notre Dame and Miami. Jesse, I've got a little something for you that might, I don't know, might change your mood here just a little bit. You've been down in the dumps after the Micah Parsons news today.
I just think everyone should be really happy about this because I'm just going to be all in on Notre Dame this season. Not that I'm not, but my football fandom is solely in one bucket this season. I don't care about the NFL. I might watch some games here and there, but I'm not watching every Dallas game, and I'm not supporting Jerry Jones anymore.
Okay. All right. We'll come back to that in a minute. Booger McFarland from ESPN was on the Ryan Russillo show recently. He had this to say about Penn State this season.
Penn State's biggest question is not on the field. It's on the sideline. You can't tell me that there's not a correlation between the amount of big games that James Franklin has lost and his ability to get his team over the hump. Like, I don't believe in coincidences. And if you go back and look at I forget the record, and I don't want to quote it, like his record in big games, whether it's against Ohio State or top whatever teams, is not good. And you're like, okay, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Like at some point, he's got to get this talented team over the hump. And it's not going to be week 1. It's not going to be week whatever. He's got about 3 or 4 games this season where he's going to be able to prove whether or not he's ready to push the right buttons and get this team over the top. I think that's the biggest question mark in college football is James Franklin, because he's got one of the 2 most talented teams. I think Clemson and Penn State are the 2 most talented teams that have returning quarterbacks in the country, top to bottom. And so can the coach get the talent over the hump?
Can the coach get the talent over the hump? Booger McFarland on James Franklin. That is blank, Jesse.
That is spot on. That is spot. And no, seriously, like I think he hit it the hammer on the nail on the head. Whatever the saying is,
hit the hammer on the head. Yeah,
he hit the hammer on the head
of the nail.
Because,
yeah,
like we all know that he's gonna do his thing in the regular season. Right? He's going to probably win 10 or 11 games. They're going to go on to the playoffs. We should not judge or draw any conclusions about James Franklin until the postseason starts. Like at this point, we know who James Franklin is. He's a regular season merchant and a guy who can't get his teams over the hump when it matters most. He is, and I mean this. Maybe, take this how you want. He's Brian Kelly 2.0. And you want to know why he got so mad about Marcus Freeman and so insecure about Marcus Freeman? Because he's younger, he's recruiting at the same level, and he's won more games. He's won more big games than James Franklin has in his career.
Recruiting at a higher level now. Yeah.
Exactly. And so that's why he had to protrude all of those insecurities in that press conference is he knows what the writing is on the wall. And that's he hasn't got his team over the hump when it matters most. And so I quite frankly do not care what James Franklin does in the regular season because it will be enough to be in the playoffs. I am going to start my assessment on James Franklin that first playoff game.
Probably the second playoff game, depending on whether or not they get a bye.
Right, unless they get an SMU again.
We've taken shots at their schedule, deservedly so, all off season. It's coming now. The season is finally here, so we'll see what they do. Again, it's like, okay, you got Oregon and you got Ohio State. Well, you've lost 8 straight to Ohio State. Are you going to beat them this year? You're 1-15 against top 5 teams. Are you going to actually win a second game? Because that's either going to happen, like it'd be Ohio State or Oregon, and then once you get to the playoff, it's essentially, we started off talking about you're down on the Cowboys and you're ticked off at Jerry Jones and everything else. Well, it's no different than the Dallas Cowboys, really. Like, they've proven that they can win a lot of games in the regular season. What do they do once the postseason gets here? They fold, like that has been the history. And it's the same with James Franklin. Great. You expanded the playoffs. So Penn State finally got into the playoffs. You beat two very average, lower tier playoff teams last year. You got to the semifinals. What happened when you went up against a good Notre Dame team? Well, it was a close game. You were leading, but when everything mattered, your team folded in the end. And Marcus Freeman, the better coach team, won. That's where it is. I'm completely with you. Like, what are you going to do when the games actually matter? That's how James Franklin is going to be judged. And I don't think he's going to be judged very well when it's all said and done this year.
We got time for one last one.
We got about 3.5 minutes here.
The floor is yours.
So the ACC, of course, is going to start throwing out fines against schools when fans rush the field this season. Over in the SEC, they're fining teams $500,000 as well. Arkansas, though, is going to allow fans to rush the field after big wins. What they're going to do is, if the visiting team and the officials are allowed to reach the locker room before the fans storm the field, the SEC will waive its fine. So what Arkansas is going to do, they're going to put 3 minutes on their video board and then have a countdown clock on their video board. And then they're going to allow fans do a delayed rush of the field once the 3 minutes is over. Do you buy or sell this thing actually working?
I do buy this because the number one concern with storming the field is safety, right? You don't want to injure, obviously, officials, anyone of high regard. And most importantly, you don't want to, hurt opposing fans. And so Arkansas's thought process here is, well, if we get everyone outside of Arkansas out of here, we don't care what, people that
what
Arkansas,
anybody else?
Yeah, we don't care what happens with anyone else tied to Arkansas. We'll deal with those repercussions. So I actually buy it. I think it's a great, proactive, creative solution to allow for something that the fans want to do, right? And so I have no problem with it. And I do think I think other teams are going to start doing it as well.
I think it's going to be really interesting to see if it does work. But yeah, this is where I'm at with Stymie. Good luck actually containing the students. Like, if they decide they're going to rush the field as soon as the game's over, what are you going to do to stop them? Once they start coming out of the stands and they bum rush, 5 or 6 security guards who are standing there in yellow jackets trying to keep them out. I just Bobby says after 3 minutes, the moment has passed. Well, I mean, you're still going to celebrate. Here's the thing. Like, when you look at Arkansas's schedule, here are their home games. Arkansas State early. Of course, they've got Notre Dame this year. They've got Texas A&M, Auburn, Mississippi State, Missouri. Like, do any of those games besides Notre Dame actually qualify as a big game? What else would you rush the field for this year? I don't see this working. I think if the students want to rush the field, they're going to rush the field. I don't know if a countdown clock is going to do it. I also don't know if 3 minutes is even enough. Like,
to get everyone else off the field.
Yeah, to get to what if some guys?
Well, officials for sure. They love to sprint to the locker room after games.
But what if guys from Arkansas, no players on the other side, and they're out there chatting it up for a few minutes after the game. I don't know if it's going to work. All right. That's going to do it for tonight. Great questions we had in the we in, we out earlier. We talked about a lot of interesting stuff, I think, tonight. Jesse, collect yourself. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
More to come.
All right. That's Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. We will talk to you mañana. We'll be one day closer to game day.